On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, how the Luka Doncic trade impacts the Thunder. How does Oklahoma City match up with the new look Mavs? Are the Lakers now contenders? And what to expect from Oklahoma City at the trade deadline?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO Thunderpod. Today's show brought to you by our good friends over at GameTime. Go download the GameTime app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We're joined by Joel Lorenzi, beat writer for the Oklahoman at JXLorenzi on Twitter, to talk about the Dallas Mavericks in the middle of the night trading Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis. Joel, glad you're back. Glad we got you out of hiding. You've been ducking this pod, dodging this pod, and now you're here. So I appreciate you hopping on. But when this tweet hit the timeline and everybody thought it was fake, everybody thought that there was a hacker on the loose infiltrating the NBA world, what were your initial impressions once we found out that this trade was in fact real?
I was skeptical, like most people were, but as a journalist, I think I was like, this can't be real. But then also part of me was like, this is so unfathomable that I think there's probably truth to it. And then you see the reports, start to flow in from McMahon and Brad Townsend and Mark Stein, and you're like, okay, this is real. And I wouldn't say it was similar to like Josh Gideon Caruso in that you started to see that there were no further developments. I mean, that was part of it, but there was nothing more to be stuck on. No picks. There were no amount of picks really, at least indicated on first glance, that would have made this trade make sense.
Yeah,
Dallas traded a 25-year-old superstar and perennial MVP candidate, a generational talent, the face of many franchises. I mean, a guy, if you were to redraft the entire NBA, probably goes in the top 3, maybe 4, depending on who these GMs are. That guy got moved for a 31-year-old all-star, and everything else, all the rest of the assets didn't matter. There was no Rudy Gobert return. There was no Paul George-like return. There was nothing of the sort. That became clear from jump. And so then we were left to wrap our heads around it as a public, as sports fans, as sports enjoyers, as people whose lives are, sort of defined by this sport. And I still don't know if I have the words to describe, what truly went down.
I mean, the trade broke from ESPN that the Lakers got Luka, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris. The Mavericks got Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first-round pick in 2029. And the Jazz hop in there and get 2 second-round picks, one from Dallas. So Dallas also gives away a second-round pick in this whole deal. And Jalen Hood-Schifino in Utah. Good little flyer for Utah, by the way, who just hops in there.
Just getting in on this NBA stuff.
It is incredible stuff. And I will say, we mentioned the reporters who were all over this just now. What incredible reporting that they did overnight and into this morning of the clearest picture you can get from the craziest story in the NBA sphere ever. And one of the craziest stories in all of sports ever. They really let us in to what the thought process was, no matter how silly we think the thought process is, that it was all based upon Luka didn't want out. Luka was willing to sign the 5-year supermax, and Nico Harrison just decided, you know what? I'm the man in charge here. I'm the captain now. I'm trading Luka Doncic on my own accord because they believe Anthony Davis is a win-now move. They believe Anthony Davis is more dependable than Luka Doncic, who has had conditioning problems, had injury problems, although let's not look into AD's injury history, I guess. And they made the swap. It is bizarre, and it is a tale of two different trades because it felt like Dallas, despite having a worse record than Los Angeles, were closer to winning a championship. They just got to the finals last year, and it felt like all the Mavericks had to do was sit around and wait till they get healthy, and then they'll go on another run as a lower seed. And now everything changes. LA is set up now for the next 10 years. I'm not sure how much better they got on this specific season, but they're set up now with a franchise star, because when LeBron's time came due in the NBA, like whenever he decides to quit, they were really trapped. They really had no direction to get another guy of this caliber, and yet it's gift wrapped to them by Nico Harrison. But the most interesting storyline in all of this from a Thunder perspective is the Dallas Mavericks. Like, the Dallas Mavericks have had the Thunder's number here recently. They of course ousted them in the playoffs last year. It's been a matchup problem this year. It was projected before this trade that even if the Thunder won this series, which we both predicted that they would, it would go 6-7 games. And now all that history is out the window between these two teams. They're going to have a fresh start if they ever do match up again this year in terms of personnel and scouting. How do you think that the Thunder Mavericks series changes now with no Luka Doncic?
Astronomically. I mean, we're looking at a different team, and that's why I think even in our conversations and most people's conversations in their homes today, this is so baffling. I mean, this trade happens because Nico Harrison, to be blunt, thinks Luka's out of shape, lazy, and all these things, when in reality, I mean, sure, maybe Nico's criticisms through certain lenses were fair. I still have yet to see this with my own eyes, besides other people's tweets and aggregation. But there's somebody saying that either McMahon or somebody else has reported that Luka's close to 270. That's BS. That has to be. I'm not saying McMahon is reporting that. I'm saying somebody else was saying that McMahon reported that. I still have yet to see that. But 270, Luka, we know what 270 looks like. Luka was not 270 the last time we saw him, which was fairly recent. And so these are the criticisms Nico Harrison has of Luka. And regardless, if he truly is out of shape, lazy, you think he's obviously he's not a good defender. If you think he's so incompetent as this lead guard, regardless of these criticisms, there are literally less than a handful of players on earth who can pick apart a playoff defense the way Luka Doncic could. Out of shape, not a good defender, doesn't matter. I mean, that dude, the passes he can make, the skip passes he can make, the windows he can fit passes into, the reads he makes, the cerebral playmaker he is, picked apart the Thunder defense to a degree that made it so that slim margin they won that series by, they're winning because of the Thunder game plan, leaving shooters open. Who do you think is hitting them? Who do you think is making those reads? Whether he's hurt or not hurt or whatever the case is, he's the one who makes that possible. And so now you look at a Dallas team whose lead guard is Kyrie Irving, which changed everything completely. Is Kyrie Irving going to make those same reads at this stage? Was he ever? And so you look at their guard core now, Kyrie was being a second option, a second closer, a secondary ball handler. He made that look sexy. It looked really great on Kyrie Irving. And now the rug has been completely swept from under him. Their guard core is hardly postseason worthy. They have all these middling guards. Spencer Dinwiddie is probably their second best guard now. And Kyrie is their lead guard. Their toughest action to guard is the Kyrie AD pick and roll, I'd imagine. And that is completely different from Luka choosing violence in the pick and roll with anybody he is on the other side of it with. Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford. It really didn't matter because when you were in the pick and roll with Luka, it was trouble. And so they everything changes for them. Anthony Davis is their first option now. I don't know. Like people have mentioned PJ Washington, who obviously now has more responsibility if that was a series, kind of mirroring what he's had to do in recent games with them with some of the limited personnel. But even then, they still have to have smalls on him, it would seem, especially if AD is doing this whole I want to be a 4 thing. So I don't know that PJ's Thunder Killer role really changes. He's still going to have smalls guarding him, which is essentially why he was able to get off the way he was. But the guard core is diminished just like that. It's very much incompetent for the kind of series we're talking about. AD is your first option. You're probably running a chunk of offense through him. And you have to hope that if you're leaning into his desires, which I imagine Nico is and was the plan when he traded for him, because that's Nico's guy, as is being reported, then you're going to lean into the Anthony Davis as a 4 stuff. This is stuff he's been yearning for forever now. What does that look like? Is that clean? Like, what are we looking at then?
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation that truly changes everything long-term and especially short-term. Let's continue talking about how the Mavericks match up with the Thunder coming up. But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at GameTime, go check out GameTime today because GameTime is incredible. GameTime is the place you want to go to check out the best deals on new events and comedies and concerts and sporting events. Get your tickets for those things at the right price without the headache at GameTime. It's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works with GameTime Picks. The app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. Go there right now to GameTime Picks, and while you're there, you'll love the fact that they have super deals on prime seats that you will not believe the value that they have for you. And the view from your seat feature is a game changer. Before you even hit buy, it tells you exactly what your seat looks like in the venue and how your sight lines appear. And as a matter of fact, the best part about GameTime is that you're covered with GameTime's lowest price guarantee. If you somehow find a better deal somewhere else, which you will not, but if you do, they're so confident that they will refund you 110% of the difference in that deal. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Go download the GameTime app, create your account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Go download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Joining us today is Joel Lorenzi at JX Lorenzi on social media, the Oklahoman beat writer for your Oklahoma City Thunder. So the Mavericks Thunder series is interesting, and you laid out the foundation of the situation in the last segment, but there's two kind of schools of thought here. I think that the guard stuff is more interesting than the big stuff, contrary to popular belief, but from a guard standpoint, you're absolutely right. They don't have the facilitation necessary to exploit some of the Thunder's help that they did in the postseason a year ago. Kyrie in the postseason a year ago was not an electrifying scorer against Oklahoma City, as Jalen Williams did an amazing job defending him, and now he gets moved up that scouting report from the Thunder's litany of perimeter defenders, which then can put J-Dub on other players like a P.J. Washington. But I still think that P.J. Washington can go get his against Oklahoma City still. The big man rotation, though, if you believe Anthony Davis, and he's told you flat out for like 3 years now, he prefers to play the power forward over the center. That means that on the court, you're going to have a non-shooting big, either Gafford or Lively, or, and those two guys will be interchangeable once they get healthy. And then AD at the 4. And if you're going to run AD Kyrie pick and rolls, where's Lively and Gafford going to go? They're either going to have to camp at the rim or be ignored on the three-point line, to where that really crams the paint for a Thunder team that will eventually have Hartenstein and Holmgren healthy. I think that this really muddies up Dallas's offense to a degree that brings them down to kind of where the Thunder are at, of like, if you think that the Mavericks offense previously, before this trade, was so much better than Oklahoma City, well, the Thunder's historic defense is now heightened by the fact that you can exploit some Mavericks limitations. And if that offense craters a little bit, now the Thunder offense has an advantage, or at least less of a gap to cover against Dallas. And it just changes this whole series. I think that the Thunder would have won a series anyway, just based upon how these two teams look when healthy this year. But man, you got to feel really confident about the Thunder taking on Dallas, because they're kind of playing with fire. Like the whole rungs of NBA history have told you that it's hard to make a trade deadline deal and really integrate the roster on the fly in a hurry before the postseason. They did it flawlessly last year. I mean, flawlessly. But whenever they made the PJ trade and they made the Gafford trade, not only did those two guys take them to the NBA Finals, but like you look at the deadline numbers from the deadline to the end of the year in the regular season, they were one of the best teams in the NBA, and they were seamless with how they were able to fit. And then they clicked in the playoffs. I'm not sure you can get that seamless fit with all of this change again this season, especially because one of your now top players, Derek Lively, is out until the postseason. So I don't really know what Dallas is expecting in terms of the win now department, the way that Nico Harrison is claiming that this move is.
My thing for Mavs fans that I would be praying for, because I imagine there is hardly even a semblance of hope left in that city. I mean, they've been robbed in the middle of the night of a guy that drew countries to watch them. I mean, Slovenia was tuned in to this dude. The whole city had an icon, basically. I mean, that dude just led them to the finals. What I would be hoping for them to even like recover any level of optimism, I think that might have been washed away last night, is that with Lively out in the meantime, that they see good things from AD at the 5 and that rotation of AD, Gafford behind him. Like, obviously, they're going to try the 4-5 thing, but with Cleveland now included in that trade, there's versatility that's even cut out the deal now while Lively's out. And so maybe they see AD at the 5. Maybe AD likes being at the 5 in that situation. I don't know. But I would think that would be what they're hoping for. And you look at this trade and you really wonder, like, what lens Nico Harrison was looking through. Because I think a lot of Thunder fans, for obvious reasons, have been looking at this team, the Thunder team, I mean, through the scope of, well, how do they match up with Dallas? Because you look across the West, and with the way this roster is built upon last season's run, with the personnel they added, how many people really rivaled them? How many teams really rivaled them the way the Mavericks did? And so I'm thinking, you know, I don't know that Sam ever thought this way or gave us any indication that he ever thought this way. But I don't know if the Thunder was necessarily built to beat the Mavs. They were so obviously tied to them. But this whole defensive slanted thing, see what offense you can get away with Shea and friends, was, I don't know if that was meant for the Mavs, because they still clearly need Chet and Dub to develop offensively to rival the Mavs team of old now. But on the Dallas side, I don't know. I don't know that they ever looked through the lens of the Thunder, that the Thunder was the team that needed to get past. This feels to me, and I've seen someone toss this thought around too, this feels to me like they were looking through the lens of how do we beat Boston? And that's why I imagine the justification for AD comes in, because Nico is on record saying that defense wins championships in the last 24 hours, and Luka is a known poor defender. Now, obviously, you and I, it seems, don't care. That doesn't matter. But I'm just thinking of the lens Nico's looking through. And so if defense truly does win championships, I mean, how does that defense measure up? By the way, AD, great individual defender, can switch out, is one of the best defenders on earth. From what I've seen, has not had as great a year as he had in the Laker uniform in the past. How much does he really change the landscape for this Dallas defense? Do they measure up to the Thunder defense, which is the best net rating in the league right now, best defensive rating, I should say, in the league right now, and is one of the best defenses of the modern era, and has yet to be truly healthy? I mean, the guy that would have been their defensive player of the year has played 10 games, has not played since the beginning of November. And so it's hard for me to see the real win now picture for Dallas. Not to say they won't be competitive at all, because they will. But like, what's their edge now if OKC is defensively slanted and has to go with Shea and friends in the playoffs, offensively? I mean, which way is Dallas slanted at this moment?
I think that if you're Dallas, you know, you're hoping that the ability to pack the paint with like AD, and you know he'll be switching out, he'll be roaming around. Then you'll still have Lively down there, you'll still have Gafford down there. That can make life really hard on Shea and J-Dub in the mid-range and deter them from getting to the rim. And you just don't have faith in Wiggins and Joe and Kaysen to make you pay, and Dort to make you pay consistently enough in a playoff series. I think that that's the wrong strategy. I think that that's not a good idea, but that's what you're hoping for. You're hoping in a potential playoff series with the Thunder now that you can turn this into a rock fight. Only Shea's capable of stepping up to that moment in the offense and in the playoff setting. And then meanwhile, if it is a rock fight, you feel good about Kyrie stepping up. You feel good about AD stepping up in those moments. Again, I think that it's wrong. I think that you had a clearer path to beating the best team in the West if you would just stood pat at the trade deadline than doing this. But that's your hope, and we'll see if they're right or wrong on that. I think that they're wrong, but I think that that's the only route you can take. It's just cram in the paint, they're literally tripling down on their advantage from last postseason without the foresight of, hey, the Thunder have corrected that issue, even if you haven't seen it yet. Like the Thunder have corrected not having a backup big man. They've corrected not having enough big man bodies from last postseason. It's just that last postseason and every matchup this season against Dallas, you haven't gotten a front row seat to that because Chet's been out since November 10th, and they haven't played a single minute together, Chet and Hartenstein. So I guess that's their angle for getting past the West.
And by the way, among the things you mentioned, the edges in last postseason, Josh Giddey's gone and has been since the summer. And so I want to ask, we can agree that both of these teams are now defensively slanted, right? Like that's the makeup of these teams. And so I think, to put into more words, I think where the confusion stems from is I think we spent, and maybe some of this was rooted in that Dallas regular season series, which is maybe wrong on our parts. We shouldn't have had real takeaways from that, but it slips into our minds. We're human, of course, right? So I do wonder if we weren't even so sure that the Thunder, one of the best defenses in the modern era, was capable of winning a championship and making a finals run as this defensively slanted team with Shea carrying so much of the offensive load. If we weren't even sure of them, how can we be sure of Dallas being this defensively slanted team? When would they even have the best defender truly healthy in this series? Their unit, how does it hold up?
Would they have one of the two best defenders, like with the way Jacob's defending, with the way Chet? If Chet comes back and plays at his hold on. If Chet comes back and plays at his like defensive apex, which is a massive gamble. Let me be frank. I mean, he's coming off of a hip injury. I think that sometimes we can gloss over that. Yes. Like but if he comes back and plays at his defensive level, and Jada plays at this elite level, and you have Lou Dort and Casey Wallace and Alex Caruso, who's a two-time all-defensive player, like when do you pick a Dallas player that you'd want to build a defense around? And like AD's probably 2 at best, 3 or 4 at worst, but still, that's your best guy, though.
Yeah, my thing was if you were gonna make this the fight and fight fire with fire, which again I don't think Nico was thinking of the Thunder at all with this move. I think he was thinking past the Thunder. I mean, who's Dallas's best perimeter defender as it stands? Maybe Najee. I say Najee. PJ can do some stuff. I will say, got to give credit to Kyrie in that last playoff series. He defended really well, especially comparatively to his expectation level. So you're banking on that happening again. You're banking on once the playoffs roll around, Kyrie turns into a different level of a defender. And I think that part of this is they believe in their role players. Like they believe that while we think that they'll take a step back because Luka's not there setting them up, and I think that that's a legitimate criticism of this team and these role players, they don't see it that way. They think that PJ will still knock down open shots. They think that they'll still be able to get the ball out to him and have him dominate a game. And they're betting, like I said, against the Thunder role players doing that. Yeah, and that's when we return to Dallas's guard court. Yep. And what's there?
Jaden Hardy.
We've seen shades of them being competitive in this regular season series, but mind you, most of those games were without a big man. Now, Caruso told me when we talked in the locker room after the season series ending loss, that not having, like obviously Jay Will was out there, but not having Chet or iHeart, he said that none of those things affected his activity, and he felt that he was even more active on the perimeter. I don't know if I believe that or believe that to be the case with everybody that was out top. But the truth of the matter is when they have iHeart and Chet out there, I mean, what is Dallas's guard core? I mean, you're really counting on an advantages being created by Spencer Dinwiddie, Jaden Hardy. Who am I missing here?
I mean, we'll see what they do the rest of this week, but it's those guys. It's Spencer Dinwiddie, it's Jaden Hardy, it's Kyrie Irving. And if you believe the Thunder are in some disarray when Shea's off the court, like imagine when Kyrie's off the court. for the Mavericks in those minutes. And it totally just changes everything because, the Mavericks had an advantage too, where they could have staggered Luka and Kyrie in a playoff setting if they needed to, if their secondary offense got to that point. Now they have no other options. Now it just comes down to when Kyrie leaves, even if it's just for 8 minutes a night, like that's going to be detrimental to the Mavericks, or at least the opponent should make it detrimental to the Mavericks. And it levies that field, because if you don't believe in J-Dub in the big moments, or if you don't believe in what the Thunder can do without Shea on the court, I'm not going to push back on that too much until we see it. I think that they can be way better than they've shown to this point, but I'm also not going to parade around Jaden Hardy and parade around Spencer Dinwiddie, because like you said, I mean, the Spencer Dinwiddie game in the Paycom Center, the last time these two teams played, that credit to him, he made the shots, but they were very high level, easy shots to make whenever you had no rim resistance, which for the Thunder to even get to a point where they're playing the Mavericks in the playoffs, they're gonna have their guys back. They're gonna have rim resistance with Chet and Hartenstein. So it's just all so strange to me. Before this trade happened, Joel, we were both talking about how we'd still pick the Thunder to win in 7 games of this series, and they could get it done in as easy as 6, but it's going to be a long series. If these two teams matched up again in the playoffs now, where do you lean in how many games?
I might go Thunder in 5. I mean, we're looking at this as a first-round series, right? I mean, how much could Dallas truly improve its record now? I mean, Luka was expected to come back, February 8th is what I think I read. How much are they truly going to improve their standing from now to the end of the regular season without that guy? And I am thinking about your point now about staggering them. And I wonder, if they have to stagger Kyrie and AD now, and AD's the focal point of the offense for a quarter, and Kyrie's in the pick and roll with Daniel Gafford for the chunk of a quarter. I mean, how fearful are you as a defense of the Kyrie Gafford pick and roll comparatively to Luka and literally anybody? Yeah. I don't know. I probably lean Thunder in 5, and some of those games are maybe hard fought. I'm trying to think of the series that was close. What did the Boston Pacers series go to? That
was really hard fought, like five game series, I believe it was 6 games.
Near that, but some of the games are like that. I'd go with that sort of Thunder in 5.
Yeah, I'd go Thunder in 6 or Thunder in 5. I'd really it should not take a 7th game with home court advantage and with these roster advantages for the Thunder to get this series at this point, barring whatever happens the rest of this week. The Mavericks aren't done making deals. They can't be done making deals. This can't be your final iteration of this team. Neither can the Lakers be done making deals, and we'll get into that side of it too coming up. But it is just so strange that they made this trade. It's just so strange that when you look at this, I know that AD and Kyrie have a longer track record, and they do have championships on their resume. Luka's a better number 1 guy than both those guys, and he's proven to be a better number 1 guy than both those guys. Like, Luka drug that Dorian Finney-Smith team to the Western Conference Finals against the Warriors. He took off games in the bubble they had no business winning, with Boban Marjanovic as like a brutal part, a big part of their rotation. Like, Luka is way leaps and bounds better as a number 1 than both these guys, who have both had opportunities as a number 1 option and have not looked good as a number 1 despite winning as number 2 options. So they haven't won anything as a number 1. They have won something in general of their NBA career, but as a number 1, neither one of those guys has taken that mantle and ran with it to the extent of what you're hoping to do. Whenever you're calling this a win now move, when you're calling this a move to get closer to a title, it definitively does not do that for this franchise. And I think that it does take the fear out of Dallas. It does take that lingering feeling. Look, there were some Thunder people dooming about Shea's going to become 07 Dirk, and he's going to get rewarded with a matchup after winning MVP with Dallas, and they're going to beat him. There's just no more of that fear, because you're just counting on too many variables if you're Dallas now. You're counting on, like we said, to me, the only pathway for the Mavericks to win a series is every game is a rock fight, that you pack the paint, and Shea can't get going, and J-Dub can't get going because there's just too many people in the paint, and none of your guys can hit from beyond the arc. I just would not count on that. I just would not count on that being a sample size that bears out for 4 wins for Dallas. It could get you 2. I don't think it can get you 4.
Yeah. Let me ask you this before we turn the page on Dallas. Is there any way Nico Harrison can end up looking genius in the short term?
I mean, it would take beating the Thunder. Like you'd have to beat the Thunder because once you get past the Thunder, could Kyrie and AD match up with Memphis and with Houston? You feel really good about that. Could they match up with the Clippers? You feel really good about that. Could they match up with the Lakers? We'll see what the Lakers do. If the Lakers don't go get a center this week and a good center this week, then yeah, they can match up with the Lakers in the short term right now, even though the Lakers have better star talent at the top. So if they can get past the Thunder, then yes, they could. But the degree of difficulty that you make this series, like all of your hopes and dreams rest on these guys not hitting shots for a second straight postseason. That's just a huge risk because even when you pack the paint, I mean, you think about what the Mavericks did to Shea last year and how they blitzed him and how they played aggressive with him and how they ignored two different players. Like they were ignoring Lou Dort too. And Lou Dort's credit hit, of course, more than Josh hit, but like they were ignoring Josh Hit. They were ignoring Lou Dort. They were just focusing all on the paint. And Shea was still the best player on the floor in that last series against the Mavericks.
Yeah.
So if Shea's still going to be able to do that, and you just need those other guys in their second ever playoff run to be a little bit better, then what are we talking about here? Like you're just not going to be able to win that series. But if somehow they pull off a series against the Thunder, then yeah, this would be viewed as a, I don't know, because if they go back to the finals, they were at the finals last year with Luka, and you just traded a worse younger, you traded a better younger player for a worse player who also has injury concerns. So I really don't think there's anything that Nico Harrison can do short of winning a title, and this team cannot win a title.
Fair enough.
But there's way more pressure to win now. There's way more pressure to win because that's the only saving grace for a franchise. Like unless you go win that championship and the whole thing, you're just looking like the fool that you are. But it's a big day for Dirk because he keeps his legacy in line in Dallas. It's a big day for the Clippers. It's a big day for the James Harden trade. It's a big day for every previously bad trade.
I'm waiting. A big day for somebody else in Dallas history.
Jerry Stackhouse. And you know what? Also, humongous day. If I had to rank who's a big day for, Dirk number 1, Michael Finley number 2. Luka was 300 points away from passing Finn on the all-time Mavs scoring list. He's gone. He's gone. And you know who's the assistant GM for the Mavericks? Finney.
Yeah. The man who snatched the beer out of Luka's hand.
Yeah.
When they were celebrating.
He hated him since that day. And maybe that's what caused all this. But coming up, we'll talk about the Lakers because they keep getting ignored on this thing. And then we'll have an extra long podcast talking about the Thunder trade deadline. But first, I want to tell you right now, but I got friends over at PrizePicks. Go check out PrizePicks today because PrizePicks is awesome. You're going to want to check them out. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place to play daily fantasy sports with over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings. PrizePicks is there to make it fun and easy for you to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. So, for example, Luka's Laker debut, more on his 30.5-point line. And if you're correct in that, boom, you will be able to win. Plus, they have all these great promos like Taco Tuesday, which gives you a discounted player projection for even more value. And they have a lot for you to go check out by downloading the app, using code LOCKEDONNBA, and getting $50 instantly whenever you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. With the code LOCKEDONNBA, $50 instantly just for playing your first $5 lineup, win or lose. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Joel, we are back on Locked on Thunder talking about the Thunder and the Mavericks and the Lakers and the big trade that just went down in the NBA. From a Lakers standpoint, it's easy to just like push this to the future because they went from a team that once LeBron retired, they'd be a rudderless ship. Like they would not have that icon, that superstar, that face of the franchise. And now that player is Luka Doncic, and he's going to be there for a long time. Why would he ever leave LA? You would wonder to yourself as of this moment. So with that being said, in the short term, if we both agree that like long term, it's a good news for the purple and gold. In the short term, if they didn't make a second move at all, if this is just their roster on Friday, I don't think it moves the needle all that much. It's of course very scary. It was also going to be scary to play LeBron and AD just because of their star power, and star power typically wins in the playoffs. But you look at the Mavericks guard rotation have concerns. Look at the Lakers defense. Look at the Lakers rim, quote unquote, rim protection. They have zero of it. It would just be trying to win games 160 to 155. And that's just not sustainable in the playoffs. Well, I don't think that you need to do the whole defense wins championships and go all in on AD. I do think the defenses do tighten up and do matter in the playoffs more than they do in the regular season. So if this was their roster come April, how far do you think that they would go? And then if I told you that they went and got someone like a Walker Kessler, some like legitimate center, how far would they go?
If this is their roster as it stands, Lakers fans will need to cover their eyes in the postseason. Really, I start to wonder with how that chunk of the playoff picture, because the plan exists, I'd wonder if they even come out. My money's on the fact that they will remain in the playoff picture. But I mean, if that's what the roster is, you mentioned their front court, like, dude, like, who's their best big right now? Like Jackson Hayes is like their best rim protector now. Like, I mean, it's hard not to be critical of both sides on this trade, man, because obviously with Pelinka, like it's a great return for them. They've secured their future. Pelinka, for all the criticisms that people have about him, and I'm not absolving him of that because this clearly was Nico's idea, and it baffled him even upon hearing it from some of the reporting we're seeing. So I'm not absolving Rob Pelinka of his criticisms, but I can guarantee you securing this got him another 4 or 5 years on the job, at least, for a guy who's been enduring criticism during his entire tenure as GM of his team. But it's hard not to be critical of these sides in the now. I mean, Dallas, yeah, you could be critical of them in the future. The Thunder, by the way, owns an unprotected swap with them in 2028 because, of course. But right now, we're critical of Dallas. We're also critical right now of the Lakers because you can argue about LeBron's decline. It's very much real. He's drawn a lot of loose comparisons to Luka as long as Luka has been great. There are loose similarities in their styles. I don't know that LeBron is an impactful defender these days. Luka damn sure isn't. And so you have these similarities and probably enough. I mean, it's intriguing, don't get me wrong. You have two of the maybe handful of guys we talked about earlier who could manipulate a playoff defense with their bare hands. But, like, the similarities they have are, like, you almost don't want those similarities. And you wonder if they're enough to overpower. I mean, the days of two megastars are in
like your turn, my turn stuff. It's
in the past. You need to be well built on top of star power. And if this star power was to stand alone, I don't know if they complement each other well enough to really be winning series after series. I mean, Jackson Hayes is your role man. Luka has dealt with some BS in the past, man. He really has. But Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, Christian Koloko as his bigs, you're asking Luka to pull out the real to pull out some real sorcery here. And LeBron, we still are questioning his decline and what's left of him. LeBron was blindsided by this. In the age of player empowerment, the guy who's maybe had his finger on the lever the most was blindsided by a trade, by the craziest trade in sports history. I mean, and so Chris Haynes has reported that LeBron intends to stay with the team past the deadline. I don't know what move you could have even facilitated for LeBron to go to a contender or whatever was palpable by the trade deadline. But these are the Lakers right now, probably as you see them. There's no move. There's no Walker Kessler. I mean, again, you're depending on Luka to pull things out of his behind. Walker Kessler only moves the needle so much. There's another name I've heard this morning besides Walker Kessler There's nobody out there right now that they can possibly trade for. I think like legitimately trade for that moves the needle for me. I mean, I was having growing optimism about the team they did have. They had a good win just last night in New York without AD. Dorian Finney-Smith is something like they were starting to at least have some type of optimism in the middle of the West, which is now just scarier for them in the now. Obviously, in the future, Rob continues to try his hand at building around Luka, but right now it's terrifying.
It is, and I think that Rob Pelinka deserves a lot of credit for this trade. He's one of those guys that it's easy to pile on, and so get your jokes off, get your clout from Twitter, like for just a not mind-numbing take, just for likes. But you mentioned it, to blindside LeBron is a crass business decision, but the right one to make, because to keep this under wraps for a month, you're working on a Luka trade for a month and not tell anybody, to the point that it doesn't get out, to the point that there's not even any whispers or inklings or anything, or not even any like soft reporting of monitor what's going on in Dallas right now, to the point where when the trade hit the timeline, everybody thought that Shams was hacked. Like that's what it takes to pull off a deal like this. That's what it took for the Thunder to get this package for Paul George. We all love to like throw victory parades for Sam Presti, but now that Pelinka has pulled off a deal like this, we're saying, oh, what a lucky move. Oh, what a lucky move. Guess what? As much as Sam Presti is great at his job, he also got lucky, because the Clippers could have called Kawhi's bluff first and foremost. The Clippers could have said, hey, Paul, we got Kawhi online. If you'll come, you publicly demand the trade. You publicly make a mess of things. Everybody will buy it because you just did this in Indiana. You don't want to be in a small market anymore. You thought this is what you wanted, but it's not. Make a mess of it. We get all the leverage, and boom, now we can have a lesser trade package to give Oklahoma City for you. The Thunder keeping it under wraps is what netted them that historic haul. The Lakers keeping this under wraps is what nets them Luka Doncic. If they told LeBron or asked LeBron or put feelers out to LeBron of what he thinks of a Luka trade, I guarantee you Clutch tells somebody about it, and then it gets out. And then if Dallas sees all this backlash on the front end, maybe it changes their perspective of the trade. Maybe it doesn't, but maybe it changes the course of how these trade talks go and how these trade talks developed, because it sounds like it was both of them, Nico and Rob Pelinka, versus the world. They were just in their own little bubble having these conversations, half-baked about how to trade Luka to LA, and the owner signed off, and that's all it took, and away it goes. But if the owners, especially in Dallas, new to basketball, got wind of the fan pushback on the front end, you just never know how the trade could have unfolded. So it is a little bit of luck, but it's also a lot of skill to have the confidence in yourself not to go tell LeBron, not to go run your mouth about and have arrogance about what you're about to do, because that's what the Thunder were able to capitalize on as well whenever they were leveraging the Raptors against the Clippers, because they kept those trade talks under wraps.
Well, for one, again, I'm not celebrating Rob here. You are welcome to. I just think it's the boy who cried wolf, like the same dude who watched LeBron fall into his lap, the same guy who traded for Russell Westbrook and almost instantly shaved off years of LeBron's, chance.
Yeah, but a lot of that is what LeBron wanted. Like, sure. A lot of his bad moves are because of LeBron.
Sure. And still they happen. And so it's the boy who cried wolf. Like Rob Pelinka jumped on another thing that would save his behind. And because of everything he's done, like nobody's going to celebrate.
Life's about preservation, Joel.
And even then it's people care about now. Like Luka at 25 being in a Laker uniform is great, but people care about now. And so now you look at the depth chart, and man, it is terrifying, because
neither team can afford to be done before Thursday.
Right. The best teams LeBron has been a part of, they were at least right in doing this. I mean, the LeBron in his old age and Luka is quirky, but the best LeBron teams have had a ball handler beside him that are capable of shouldering some of that load, even though they've never been better than LeBron. Again, makes this quirky. But the best LeBron teams, the most capable LeBron teams, stacked, not stacked, whatever, have had a capable ball handler and a big that could stretch the floor, that still had some level of star power, were defenders or whatever. I mean, I think of Chris Bosh, Kevin Love
Yeah.
stretched the floor with the best of them, even in his decline. This team is not built like that. And every LeBron team has had shooters, great shooters. You kick one out the door, Max Christie. Rui Hachimura has been fine. Like, you have Dalton Connect. I will celebrate Rob for not giving away Austin Reeves in this. It's baffling to me that he wasn't part of that.
Yeah.
So you still have some shooters, but the front court is going to doom them.
Yeah, it's going to be terrible. But with these two trades in mind, does this change anything about your positioning on what the Thunder should do heading to Thursday?
People are going to hate me for this, whatever. I've always
Don't hate you, Joel.
I haven't been on the pod to kind of give my stance on this, but for anybody who's read me, and I've really tried to avoid writing about this because it's an insufferable discussion. I'm of the belief that they don't really need Cam Johnson, and that should be especially the case now. I mean, yeah, if you're looking as an opportunist and saying, well, if Wiggins just had 41, crazy enough, but if Wiggins and a pick is what you have to give, or Wiggins, some package around Wiggins is what you have to give to get Cam Johnson, which has been great. He's had a phenomenal season, great shooter, fits the mold, very pluggable. Obvious reasons why fans would want him in. I've never discredited that opinion at all. It's obvious to see why fans would want him in. I just don't know that they've ever needed him. And I know from everything Sam has told us, the sort of way of thinking that we've gathered from Sam, it just makes no sense, especially the way Sam seems to be petrified now about the whole midseason addition thing. Like, I know that was Gordon Hayward. It was low risk. That was very calculated, low risk. They still got Isaiah Hartenstein out of that whole maneuver. But I think the way Sam is thinking, if I had to guess, is, well, one, they're still probably petrified about the whole midseason thing. Like it
doesn't help the cause.
It doesn't help. The ask you're making in terms of gelling with the team, learning the system. I mean, the volatility in this whole thing is that they haven't even had Hardenstein and Chet play with each other. Like, there are question marks still left with this unit as it stands to see if it works in its infancy. And yet people want to add a very pluggable guy, but a completely new element to this thing, which I understand, but I would imagine they believe comes with some risk based on the thoughts that came postseason last year and everything that happened around that. Now, again, not discrediting the Cam Johnson stuff. He does make the most sense out of all the targets. But if they do truly believe that Chet Holmgren is going to be the next coming of, I don't know, he's coming, right? He'll be back, Rylan. He'll be back. And they, I imagine, Rylan, dude, I imagine they feel he'll be pretty close to what he was before his injury. What he was before his injury was all defense, an all-star, a full leap in front of our eyes. And I don't know if that's the guy that's second in the pecking order in terms of the offense as a scoring option, but he was damn sure second in terms of output. That dude was the second best producer. There were games where Chet Holmgren was their best player early on. And obviously Shea was navigating some of the three stuff and some of the new stuff. It wasn't until he pushed that aside that he clearly became an MVP candidate, MVP candidate. But Chet was that early season through 10 games in the preseason and whatever. And so if that's who they truly believe is coming back for them before the playoffs, then I can't be mad if they see volatility in adding somebody, even if they are pluggable, into this whole chemistry thing and the whole defensive slanted thing, because Cam Johnson isn't a terrible defender. He's not the defender they have, the level of defender they have kind of scattered across the roster. So I think there is probably, I imagine they think there's risk involved there. But you look at the West now, and it's like, I think the only reason to get Cam Johnson, we talked about this before, the only reason to get Cam Johnson now would just to be so that other teams don't get better. I mean, and then I don't know that the Thunder even move that way. And so
they typically don't.
Now. But I don't know that they need Cam. I mean, where do you sit?
Yeah, I mean, I lean really cautiously with this team. I think that we can get in a rush because they won 57 games last year, and then they're on pace to win 65 games this year, and they're going to be so good. This is still the very beginning of whatever this is. If this is the next dynasty, if this is a team that's capable of winning a championship, whatever this is, it's still the very beginning. And to me, it'd be sort of unfair to this team that has 9 losses on February 3rd to alter this roster because of one playoff run. Now, that's not to say that those guys are going to for sure get better, but you look at the actions that they're putting Isaiah Joe in, that's much more repeatable and sustainable than just hoping that guys have bad closeouts on driving kicks, which they don't do in the postseason. And they found that lesson out the hard way last year. So I just think it's unfair to shake up this roster right now when you're already adding in your second best player after the trade deadline and you're this good without him. And realistically, Chet hasn't played this year. He's last played on November 10th. Like he's not been a part of growing this roster yet. And so that's a massive addition. You're going to add in the second best player on your roster. I think that you got to give Wiggins and Joe and Kaysen and Dort the chance to step up, the chance to take the lessons that they learned last year and implement them. And if they don't, well, then guess what? In the summertime, you still have the most assets of anybody. In the summertime, you still have the aggressiveness and the willingness and the championship caliber roster necessary to go make a trade of the Cam Johnson caliber. And there's a chance that with how Brooklyn operates, that Brooklyn might not trade Cam Johnson if they don't get his demands met for the trade package. And if that's the case, that's a win for the Thunder if he's not traded by Friday. If Friday comes around and Cam Johnson is on the Thunder or on the Nets, one of those two teams, that's a massive win for the Thunder because then they can just go make the move in the summertime as they showed you that they will do. Like it would be really unfair to have Friday come and this roster, which is a 9-loss roster right now, be the same as it is today, and then give the Thunder a lot of crap for it because they've made 2 massive moves. How quickly we forget how big the Caruso trade was and how Hartenstein signed the biggest contract in club history. They've shown you a willingness to go improve this roster. They think that this roster is good enough. There's a lot of indications to believe that they are. Let them see if this roster is good enough. And then in the summertime, they've shown you that they'll go make course corrections no matter how difficult it is to do so. I mean, they gave up on the 6th overall pick, rightfully so, to go get Caruso. So I just think that this team has earned the right to play it out. With that being said, you know, it's hard to resist the temptation of what Cam Johnson can give you. And if I was a GM, if I was hired today by Clay Bennett to go be the GM of the team, I don't think I could resist that temptation. I think Sam Presti can, though. I think that there's no harm in resisting that, and there's no harm in seeing how this team moves forward. So I don't think that they're going to do much of anything on Thursday, but that's why they have the deadline. That's why we see where the dust settles at from these 30 teams in the league. But Joel, thanks for finally hopping back on the pod. Hopefully you'll stop dodging the draft of Locked On Thunder guests, and you'll be back on the pod in short order. But Joel, really appreciate it. You got some great stuff coming out really soon on the Oklahoman.
The streets are saying that I'm the Locked On Thunder guest, that they need more of us.
That's what the streets are saying. And I've told you the streets are saying that, and you ignore us. You ignore the comments. You ignore my texts. You just blow it off. You're so busy. Oh, the big Oklahoman beat writer can't have 30 minutes for a podcast. Oh, what was me? I got to write, Rylan. I know you write more stories than me every day, but I got to write. I mean, I can't do this.
Quality over quantity, Rylan. I appreciate.
I mean, that's true. You have great quality, and you'll have an amazing piece coming out this week. I wish I could spoil it right now on the pod, but I will not do that to you.
No.
I will not do that to you at all. But just know I know, and that's the biggest win of the trade deadline. The Thunder could go get Cam Johnson on Thursday, and it would not be the biggest Thunder news of the week. It would be Joel's article coming out this week, which I cannot wait for that to drop. But until next time, be good and be good to one another.